Welcome back to Season 4 of Atlantis. As you might have guessed from the resolution of our last episode, when Atlantis settled on a new ocean, Samantha Carter was placed in command of the city in place of the now missing Dr. Weir. So with that context, we can jump into things. Shepard is returning alone from a mission to help resupply a research lab, a point that Rodney is able to cover for, since normally Shepard being on a long-range mission alone would be kind of silly, well, with him being in charge and all of that. The only time Shepard should be doing something like this would be if there was like an all-hands-on-deck situation where they were doing a lot of different supply runs all at once for some very important reason, and we needed everybody who can pilot to pilot. Otherwise, it's a job that you would give to a minion. When you're in charge, you don't handle the day-to-day crap. There's a reason that the head of the Air Force isn't out making cargo runs to Eastern Europe. But recognizing this, they instead cleverly cover for this by having Rodney complain that Shepard only did this because the natives are hot with low inhibitions, which makes Shepard's choice to play Amazon make perfect sense. Rank has its privileges. Nicely done. Unfortunately, Shepard gets ambushed and loses all power, gets nabbed by a ship, and disappears into hyperspace. Still, I bet those natives were worth it. After being dragged off in restraints, Shepard has a sample of his blood drawn, and then this guy, Silas, starts to question him about who he is and where he got that puddle jumper from. Obviously, Shepard cannot divulge any information that could potentially lead back to Atlantis, and that gets him a punch in the gut, which looks like Shepard has gone from a great afternoon on Planet National Geographic to a very awful afternoon. Luckily, he was online with Rodney when this happened, so McKay has some info to go on, that it wasn't the Wraith or the Replicators, but that just means we've got some new unknown assholes to deal with. We're going to have to hurry because I'm not sure how long Shepard can hold out.
Has he said anything?
Only his name, Reed Richards.
He claims that he's quite fantastic. Their boss, Laren, swings by to be all scary at Shepard, that the last guy who was a disappointment to her disappeared, almost as if he had been tossed out an airlock. Still, they take him away to feed him, although it looks like prison food, complete with a tray that stops all the slop from congealing into each other. I mean, it's bad enough to be eating different colors of grease. You don't want them all mixed together. Well, it turns out that these travelers are kind of like the Quarians from Mass Effect, minus the Rule 34 friendly tight suits, of course. They live entirely in space, meeting with other civilizations just to trade and to perform the odd kidnapping, I guess.
Although it's not the most efficient way of getting information, it does help people to understand their situation.
My situation being completely at your mercy.
Exactly.
I'm not even there and I want to blow up their ship. She says that they heard stories about a new faction of humans using Ancient's technology, and so took steps to try to track someone down, reasoning that they must have the ancient gene that's needed to work this stuff. Shepard figures out that their attempt to utilize his genetic material to make an interface work has magnificently failed, or else they wouldn't be trying this new approach.
Don't underestimate yourself. There's all kinds of useful things you could do for me.
Come on, Shepard would have to be an idiot to be taken in by your flirtations. Anyway, the idiot follows her, and they dump him in the docking bay, where he's left facing a drop into space if the force shield were to fail. So here's hoping they built things to last. Laren also takes this opportunity to show the Atlantean warship that they want to salvage. That's what they need Shepard to fix. As she explains, during a fight with the Wraith, the ship was damaged, had a radiation leak, so they left, planning to come back later. But apparently between leaving the galaxy or trying to fix a radioactive warship in order to fight space vampires, well, it wasn't much of a choice. Here you go, Pegasus. The ship is yours if you want it, and you aren't too crazy obsessed with keeping your intestinal lining. They don't have the radiation problem licked yet, which seems like it really probably should be step one of the plan, but I suppose I'm not a band of violent space nomads, so I guess I just have a warped sense of priorities. They put up shields to try to contain it for now and drag Shepard up onto the bridge and are ready to shoot him if he doesn't make the ship go right now.
was just gonna say, you said start by moving the ship forward when you should have said start by initializing the inertial dampeners.
Wait!
This is why tech support always asks if you plugged it in. People like you. Interestingly, Shepard finds the mook who was bullying him has a gun that's just like Ronan's. Cool. Can make a matching set now. While he flies off, McKay is leading the rest of the team, plus Major Lorne, on a search of the system where Shepard had vanished. But with no signs of where they went, he says this is hopeless. The ship and Shepard can be anywhere by now if they went into hyperspace. So while they return home dejectedly, more bad news. Laren says that she's going to drop the radiation shields around the bridge. Shepard knows that she's bluffing, killing her own people, until the radiation detectors start going off. Yep, agonizing death. I can't help but think that that might hurt morale a little bit. Shepard decides to surrender rather than die, where Lorne can then rant at him for screwing up their perfect plan of torturing him into submission. They're now stranded with no communication, and Shepard can't be forced into obedience since threats of death don't work against someone who already thinks you're going to kill him. There's kind of a ruthlessness threshold, after which you get diminishing returns on your ruthlessness to the point of ineffectualness. I think Dr. Doom wrote a paper on it once. Fortunately, Shepard was able to use the communication system to send out a Morse code SOS that McKay has been able to find. We'll just have to hope that Laren doesn't find out. She found out. McKay wasn't the only one to pick up on the signal. The Wraith have too. A ship is on its way. Well, death by Wraith isn't a nice way to go, so Shepard agrees to help with the weapons chair. But Shepard needs to jerry-rig up a power supply in order to fight back. So they get a bit of an ass-kicking before they finally are able to blow up the Hive ship. But Shepard knows an opportunity when he sees one, and takes off before Laren can lock him back up again. Oh, how the worm has turned. The hyperdrive controls suffered minor damage, which Laren might be able to fix, but there's the whole problem of not being able to trust her. Kidnapping and torture tends to do that, in case you weren't aware. It's an important tip for all your interpersonal experiences. So she tries Plan B, which is breaking out, but Shepard shuts down the power so that she can't. That leaves Plan C, talking about the plight of her people. They've got no new ships, population expanding despite attempts to control it. You're on a ship, not a lot of stuff to do besides hump. I gotta say, I'm really tempted to sympathize, except for that whole kidnapping torture thing. Yeah, really, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So she finally blasts a hole through the door, and Shepard contains her with a force field. He tells her she's the only survivor from her little trio. But then, there's the blip on the lifeform detector right in front of her. I don't suppose you're here to deliver a pizza. Laren loses her gun in the struggle. Luckily, Shepard comes by to pick it up and put the Wraith down before it can feast on her. But the super gun's all out of juice, and the Wraith gun is fragged, so they're going to have a hell of a time dealing with the last three of them. So all that's left is to hide in a closet and bicker.
Just cooperated. You'd be home by now, and I'd be headed back to my people with a ship that could house 1,000 men, women, and children.
Well, if you had asked for my help in the first place instead of attacking me...
We couldn't risk it.
Risk what?
You might have said no.
Okay, now that we've taken him, he's no doubt angry, so I suggest we begin with our sob story, see whether or not that he understands why we had to do what we did there. If he says no, then we beat him into submission. Oh, no, wait, I've got an even better idea. First, we'll start with the beating, and then I'll use the sob story later on once I've pummeled all possible sympathy out of him. I'm a genius. So the plan is to use the drones inside the ship. Well, I say plan, but I really feel that word adds a sense of plotting and cunning to a really stupid notion that's being attempted out of desperation. This is the equivalent of, I'll get these guys to back off by telling them I have a black belt in haikus. To try to avoid damaging anything vital, Laren lures them on a merry chase, but a third breaks off from the group, so when Shepard blows up the first two, the third is able to start feasting on her. Well, as we saw with Todd, who will be mattering tomorrow, what the Wraith take, they can also give back. So Shepard decides to try bluffing that his gun is loaded and make the Wraith do exactly that. Luckily, it falls for it, hands over its stunner, fixes Laren, and departs. So Shepard can get her back up on her feet.
So you saying we make a good team?
Well, don't go crazy.
Right. But in the interest of interstellar relations.
Please tell me you're not this stupid, Shepard. You really are an embarrassment to men everywhere sometimes. After knocking Dumbass out right there in the hallway, Laren heads back to the control room to talk with her newly arrived backup, who takes Shepard into custody at gunpoint. Dumbass. Just in case you were swallowing her sob story, after all that he has done, Laren has decided she's not going to let him go. Let me say again, I'm not even there, and at this point, I'd be blowing up the ship out of spite. So Shepard points out that she's not seeing the bigger picture here. Having another ship to hide on is just extending a failing strategy. I mean, yeah, it's worked so far, but the reason they need this ship is that the ones they have are breaking down and not being replaced. And I doubt there are a whole lot more intact ships just waiting for some rad be gone for you to start shoveling people onto it. But with the replicators fighting the Wraith, they're vulnerable in a way that they never have been before. This ship could be used to take the fight to them and end the threat to her people and all the other humans in the galaxy. Laren is persuaded, so when the team arrives to disable the ships, Shepard is back in his own jumper to meet up with them and be brought home to his dear friends.
She was hot, wasn't she?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I knew it. That is so typical. All I know is that every time I get taken captive, it's the Wraith. Just once, I would like to be taken prisoner by the sexy alien.
I don't know. Seems to me if I was ever imprisoned, the comeliness of my jailer wouldn't be particularly important to me. Travelers is somewhat important in that it's going to pay off in a significant story later on. I give it a stamp of fine. Probably controversial, but Laren rubbed me the wrong way, and Shepard's reaction to her makes me facepalm. She just oscillated between hard-ass and I use sex as a weapon, and I don't particularly care for that. Plus, I detest self-righteous smugness by people who are doing awful things. Putting that aside, introducing a spacefaring species to Pegasus has now opened the door for someone operating at a higher level of technology than we expect in this galaxy. So, it's a wise move, something to shake things up a bit. With this being Season 4, the show really needs ways to shake things up. And while I think the replicators being effectively like the other replicators we know went a bit too far, we have already had a good first step. This takes it even further. Plus, the speech that Shepard gives to Laren about the need to be involved is going to be important when we look at our next episode, which will be tomorrow. We're going to see how the replicator-Wraith dynamic takes things to a new level with the Seer.